What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and welcome back to the Rumor Roundup series, our weekly series where we cover all the news and rumors and all the tidbits that you may have missed over the course of the week. And for those of you guys who are huge fans of DC's Injustice Gods Among Us and who are looking forward to the Young Avengers in the MCU, do we have news for you? But make sure you guys stay tuned at the end because that's when we'll cover it. So, opening up our episode this week, Jon Watts has been brought in as the director of the Fantastic Four film. And I gotta admit, I'm excited about this. If you guys want to see an interview that I did with Jon Watts that is incredibly cringy, check out the video down in the description. It's the video that I did over at Comics Explained where I interviewed Tom Holland and Jake Gyllenhaal and Samuel Jackson and all those guys from Spider-Man Far From Home. It was a really cringy interview with Jon Watts, but it was interesting nonetheless, so make sure you guys go check it out. But I'm excited about this. Jon Watts has done a great job on the Spider-Man films, and I feel like he'll translate well to the Fantastic Four. I mean, if I really want to be like crazy theories and all that kind of stuff, Spider-Man in the Solo series in Marvel Comics when he first appeared originally tried to join the Fantastic Four and was ultimately shot down. Later on in Jonathan Hickman's run, he was inducted into the Future Foundation. So I think it'd be kind of cool if Jon Watts has like some post-credit scene in Spider-Man No Way Home where Peter Parker is cordially invited to join the Future Foundation, which is brought to you by Reed Richards. Great way to introduce the Fantastic Four. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but it would be a cool little tidbit, a cool little Easter egg to go on in there. Having said that, I have full faith that Jon Watts is gonna be able to make a great Fantastic Four movie. He's handled Spider-Man spectacularly up to this point, no pun intended, so I fully believe that he is going to be able to do the same thing with the Fantastic Four. But continuing our discussion on movie news, but deviating away from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Anna Torv has been cast as Tess in the Last of Us series. Now, for those of you guys who don't know who Anna Torv is, she was in Fringe, and Fringe was a modern day take on the X-Files as far as I'm concerned. I know it has like a huge core fan base, but I feel like that's basically what it was. But it was basically a sci-fi show. And in reality, while I won't say that Fringe matches The Last of Us as a 1-to-1 ratio, it's pretty damn close, dealing with all kinds of crazy conspiracies and alien infections and different things along those lines. So having somebody that moves from a series like that into something like The Last of Us, I think is a great choice. Having said that, I'm curious to see how they're gonna handle Tess. Obviously, the show is not gonna be a 1-to-1 of the video game, at least I hope it's not. I hope it incorporates a lot of the prime elements, but hopefully it's not gonna be a direct comparison. Not only that, I've always wanted to know more about the backstory of Tess, and so I'm curious to see what they end up doing with her character. But regardless, not a whole lot of news here, just thought it's kind of cool to see a character from a sci-fi show being brought into the Last of Us series, and I'm excited for it, so I really jump at any little bit of news that we get. But continuing our discussion here on video games, two big things have happened, one of which is kind of a small little reveal that's been given to us, but is super exciting, and the other one's terrible. So the first thing is that we are getting a remake of Dead Space. Yes, I'm so excited about that. I love Dead Space. Oh my God, I love that video game series. Scared the hell out of me, but I loved it. I absolutely love Dead Space, and I can't wait to be Isaac again. I loved all that stuff, but Dead Space, for those of you guys who never played it, is one of the best science fiction horror games ever released. It's fantastic. The storytelling's wonderful. Wasn't the biggest fan of the second one, not nearly as big of a fan of the second one as I was of the first one, but they were still great games nonetheless. The third one was garbage, so much so that everybody pretends it doesn't exist, so they only say it's only 2 Dead Space games. I'm really hoping they don't give us that terrible story of the third game, but Dead Space 1 and 2 were wonderful. The first one takes place in space. The second one actually takes place on a space station, Earth. I keep wanting to say it's Earth, but I believe it's a space station, but things pop off. You guys remember like when you're going through like all the apartments and all that kind of stuff, like you're walking through there and there's one room where like a baby's crying and the whole time you're like, oh my God, I really hope that little baby's not gonna get killed by like the monsters and everything, but you kind of know it's going to. Like, it's pretty wild. It's really wild, but the games were wonderful. They were spectacular. There aren't really any details in terms of the quality of the game, any additional footage or anything along those lines, but because it's gonna be a remake, we can largely assume it's gonna have increased graphic fidelity, right? So it's gonna look a lot better on the next gen consoles, probably a PC release and all that kind of stuff. But regardless, it's gonna be great. I'm excited for that. But the second thing that we were gonna talk about here, which is a disastrous piece of news, Amazon is killing people's GPUs. And it kind of makes sense. It's killing their livelihoods, might as well kill their GPUs too. So apparently what's going on here is Amazon had the beta release of their New World MMO, and people who were spending probably in excess of $2,000 on RTX 3090s because, you know, scalpers, they're dying. Their GPUs are getting fried, like literally just bricking these things. Apparently it's happening worse to the EVGA 3090 for the Win models than they are any other models, but it's not just 3090s. People with like 3080 Ti's, 3080s, all kinds of people are basically reporting and saying their GPUs are being killed by this game. I was watching some gameplay footage. It doesn't look overly intensive in terms of graphics. Maybe it's just because of the YouTube video that I watched, but it looks like an upscale version of like World of Warcraft, you know what I mean? But the graphics don't look like a giant MMO version of like Destiny 2, right? Or something like Final Fantasy 15, that's like an MMO game. It doesn't look like it's exceedingly hardcore in terms of graphics. So what apparently is being reported is that people's GPUs are running at 100% and that's what's killing them. But to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because people stress test their GPUs at 100% all the time, and they do it for hours on end to make sure that like their overclocking is working or whatever the case happens to be. So I don't really know what's going on. Regardless, Amazon responded by saying they're issuing a patch and they're advising people to basically decrease their frame rates and to max them out at 60, which is pissing off all the people who are on 144 hertz monitors. I don't know what to tell you. Apparently, like if you're running 144 hertz, it's killing your GPU. I don't necessarily know all the details and everything, but the important thing is Amazon responding with a patch, and apparently it's supposed to fix the problem, if not at the very least, cope with the problem until they can find an actual solution. But that's the reason why we have betas, is so that these kind of things can get sorted out. I doubt that anybody who signed up for the beta was expecting their $2,000 GPU to get fried, but nonetheless, this is why we have betas. But moving back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Michaela Cole has been cast for a mystery role in Black Panther 2. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, Michaela Cole is fantastic. The I May Destroy You series on HBO, I absolutely loved it, but she wrote and did all that stuff. Like, she's literally the mastermind behind it. But people are really speculating what her mystery role is, and a lot of people are thinking that it's Storm. Now, the reason why a lot of people are speculating that this is Storm is because in Reginald Hudlin's run in Black Panther Volume 4, issue number 15, you actually ended up learning that in her early years when she lived in Africa, Storm had a romantic relationship with T'Challa. Now, ultimately, they had to end it because T'Challa's duties as king required him to focus on that, and Storm, just couldn't maintain the relationship with him. Years later, they would actually get married in probably one of the most celebrated comics of all time, which actually took place during the Civil War. But the whole thing behind this is that there's a lot of history there, and so a lot of people are hoping that's the case. Now, at the time that I'm recording this, I have not heard of any news that's come out and debunked the theory that it might be Storm, but a lot of people are hoping that this is how the X-Men get introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that it's just small little things here and there, that you basically end up having some kind of reference to Colossus as part of like the Winter Guard and Black Widow. Of course, we didn't get that, but that Storm might appear in Black Panther 2 as basically being a potential romantic interest of T'Challa. She maybe attends the funeral of T'Challa, assuming they have it, to reflect the unfortunate passing of Chadwick Boseman here in the real world. And when people ask, who are you? She says, my name is Aurora, and then boom, you've got Storm in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We don't really know exactly what's going on with her character, but regardless, I tweeted this out yesterday, and I'm curious to see what your all's response is on this. I think Black Panther 2 will actually outperform Avengers Endgame at the domestic box office, just because of the fact that a lot of people really want to see how Black Panther 2 is going to be handled in the aftermath of Chadwick Boseman's passing. I don't really mean to turn it into a thing where it's like a cash grab or anything like that. That's just kind of my thought, right? Because the passing of Chadwick Boseman is a huge deal, and he was fantastic as Black Panther. And I think a lot of people just really want to see what it's going to look like after. But regardless, I'm excited to see who Michaela Cole is going to play in the new Black Panther film. I don't really know, but it's going to be cool, and I'm looking forward to it. And so getting into our final two pieces of news here, the Young Avengers and DC's Injustice Gods Among Us, a lot of you guys who are huge fans of Injustice will be happy to know that it's getting a movie. And I've been screaming about this for a long time. I loved Injustice Gods Among Us. Those of you guys who aren't really familiar with this, I'll give you the quick little rundown here. Essentially what happens is Superman finds out that Lois Lane's pregnant with their kid. She ends up going out on a mission where there was just some kind of crazy event that took place in the docks or something like that. She's kidnapped by the Joker. She's taken to a tanker. The entire Justice League hunts around for her. Ultimately, Superman finds her first. At the same time all that's happening, the fear toxin of the Scarecrow is taken, a nuclear warhead's taken, and some kryptonite's taken. Come to find out, what had happened is the Joker and Harley Quinn had kidnapped Lois Lane. They took her to the tanker. tanker, they laced the entire area with a kryptonite dust that included the fear toxin of the Scarecrow, which forced Superman to hallucinate that Lois Lane was Doomsday. In turn, he basically freaks out, grabs what he thinks is Doomsday, takes her into space. The whole time Batman's trying to get a hold of Superman. When he finally does, he tells Superman that's not Doomsday, that's Lois Lane. So basically, the Joker tricked Superman into killing his own wife and unborn child. The other part of this is that the nuclear bomb was set inside of Metropolis and was set to detonate when Lois Lane's heartbeat stopped. So when Superman killed Lois Lane, he blew up Metropolis at the same time. Batman grabs the Joker, takes him back to a police station. Superman comes flying through like a bat out of hell, smashes through all the shield constructs that like the Green Lantern puts in place to try to stop him, flies into the police station and basically punches a hole through the Joker, just like kills the Joker on the spot. After that, he's just like enough and just becomes like this like dictator over the world. It's amazing. It's one of the best stories ever in the history of comics. I love Injustice Gods Among Us. I really hope they do what they did with The Dark Knight Returns, where they give us like 2 parts. Honestly, I feel like The Dark Knight Returns didn't need to be 2 parts. I feel like they focused too much on the mutants and that didn't really need to happen, but hardcore purists will say that it needed to be 2 movies so that they could basically do the entirety of the story in absolute detail. Don't really know if I agree with that, but the whole point here is that this is one of the coolest movies that you're ever going to see from the DC Comics universe, from Warner Brothers Animated. Which also kind of reminds me, I don't know why Warner Brothers doesn't just focus on their animated movies. Maybe because people look at animated movies and see them as kind of silly and a little bit childish. I don't really know why. They love going to movie theaters and watching movies about how a guy is exposed to gamma radiation and turns into a giant green rage monster. Not really sure how you split the difference. I mean, at the end of the day, if you can call the Avengers movie a comic book movie, that's awesome. I don't know why you can't do the same thing for animated films. After all, The Lion King is the greatest animated film of all time, and nobody calls that silly or childish, but I really wish that Warner Brothers would just focus on their comic book animated line and just leave the live action movies in the dust, because they have just been bad consistently, but the animated movies have been great consistently. I wish they would just focus on that. But regardless, DC's Gods Among Us is going to be an awesome film, and I cannot wait for this movie to come out. Having said that, moving into our last bit of news here, focusing on the Young Avengers, actor Jack Veal, who played Kid Loki in the Loki TV show, was recently asked about what his thoughts were in appearing in the Young Avengers. And what he basically revealed is he has not heard anything about it yet. Now, that does not mean it's not going to happen, and it does not mean he's not going to be in it. We know Young Avengers is going to happen, it's only a matter of time, but we also know that Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen were basically hit up at the 11th hour to see if they wanted to do a WandaVision TV show. Like, literally, it was like a napkin idea and then they just launched it, right? So it's one of these things where if the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Disney are keeping this really close to the vest, these guys won't even know it's a project until right before it launches. And so even if they do know, they've probably been sworn to secrecy under pain of death and they can't tell us. But regardless of the situation, I do want to see Jack Veal in the Young Avengers as Kid Loki. I think he'd be a perfect addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a greater whole. And in all honesty, I think that's one of the things that you're going to see in a lot of the shows going forward, right? You're going to see the introduction of characters here and there that Marvel's basically going to kind of throw to us and say, hey, like, what do you guys think about this character? What do you think about that character? Not so much in terms of hitting it on the nose and asking us directly, but by just kind of revealing them to us over the course of the shows and seeing how we respond in terms of our whole position on social media. For example, there was a whole argument that took place between whether or not the Loki alligator that we saw was either an alligator or a crocodile. There was this huge debate that was happening on Twitter. It was explosive. Everybody was just kind of going back and forth over whether it was an alligator or a crocodile. But regardless, that kind of stuff right there is really what helps to determine what characters are the most popular and which ones aren't. And so because of that, I feel like having Jack Veal as Kid Loki in Young Avengers would be great. It'd be a great addition to the Young Avengers landscape. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. But regardless, we're going to bring this to an end. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.